everyone. This is Sister Elizabeth, and I'm here with Sister Liz, and we are in the third episode of the Carville experience. It's so great, and you are listening to In the Company of Charity, the podcast of the Daughters of Charity, and I'm just so excited because these episodes have been meant so much to me to do them with Wendy Chin-Tanner and the Archivist last time, and then this week we get to talk also to the King of the Armadillos, Walter Chin himself. So, a lot to look forward to in this episode. But before we get to our reflections there, before that, we have some big news from Sister Liz. Tell us all about it.
Breaking news.
I wish we had one of those like things they have on TV. You know, like the little sound. I can't even do it, but
a little strip down at the bottom,
strip.
The lower third, saying "Breaking news, everybody! Hot off the presses! I have a new mission." And
it's so exciting.
Ministry. Yes. So I will be the vocation director for the province of St. Louis, USA, and going to Wilmington, Delaware, y'all. Wilmington, Delaware, vocation ministry.
I just can't believe it. I can't believe it. I say now, I'm thinking for those of you who have been listeners from the very beginning, you know that the unique experience that we've shared throughout this podcast is that I was Sister Liz's vocation director. And
way back,
always been our connection way back when. And I've always been so proud of her. You know, in the community, you feel like a little mother, you know, like, oh, this was one of mine, you know. It's so sweet. It's so sweet. And so now you get to have that experience. I can't believe it. So I'm even doubly surprised and doubly thrilled for you.
Let it be known that two of your proteges, so I being one of them, and then Sister Salvatrice, have, you know, had our time to step into more responsibility within the company. And so Sister Salvatrice is currently on the provincial council, which we're so excited for. And what a smart and compassionate and full of the spirit person Sister Salvatrice is, and I, the goofball, have been chosen to help walk with young people making life decisions. So it's a gift.
Yes, and you know, really to let this whole experience of the three of us, Sister Salvatrice is specifically taken on the role of formation counselor. So her role is to work with women who are in discernment, women who are, as well as another sister, Sister Joanne Basha, who was my seminary directress. So there's all of this like crazy
web.
Connection. Yeah. But for the three of us to think that in some ways we'll actually be working together.
Yes.
In the formation of women coming to the company. So if you have been discerning at all, ever,
now's a good time.
Like sitting on the fence, get in now. I'm telling you, this is such a good time. The stars are all aligned, you know. It's so, I mean, it really is amazing. And I don't say that arrogantly. I'm just saying whatever God is doing, he's kind of pulling together a period of time that was just fruitful. I remember your coming and Sister Salvatrice's coming as a very fruitful vocation time. You'll have that experience too. But yeah, so if you're thinking about it,
come on out.
Email us, get your name on Sister Liz's list, and in 2 years, I'll see you in the seminary. How about that?
Exactly. Get it going, y'all. I think, you know, as we start to think about this episode, I think it's so neat to hear about the way that the sisters were with the people at Carville, from Walter himself, of not only the healing of body that occurred for him, but the healing of his spirit and the growth that he experienced as a young man. And what a gift and a testament to the human spirit of the sisters, of the other coworkers, of the young people and other people there too, who contributed to such a blessed community in the midst of a challenge that they all experienced. So it's humbling to be in line with so many Daughters of Charity who have been faithful over the years. And we're getting to hear about some of them during this episode and the people that they served. Very cool.
Yeah. If you heard the last episode, Elizabeth and Scott, the two archivists, spoke about just the preservation of information and the preservation of these stories, like Walter's story, in hearing from them what their experience was like, because they came as young children. And I think what I've gotten from this, and I hope as people are listening, is that the sisters in this experience, which they had no idea really what they were getting themselves into. I mean, they were nurses, and I think they understood how they would be healing the body as much as they could, even though then we didn't really even understand the disease, in its fullness that we do now. Um, but that as they were helping to heal the mind and the soul as well, they were in some ways like formators. They were helping to form the lives of the people who were there, so that when it was time, when they were healed, when there was an experience of them getting better, that they were prepared to go out. Many of them were immigrants. Many of them were young children when they came, and had no experience in the outside world. And here they were in this very different, eclectic kind of place, where, people of many cultures, people of even different languages were living together. There was all kinds of opportunities for them. That was not the world they were going to go out to. And so our sisters, weren't just there to heal the body, but they were really there also to form them into people who could step out, in their fullness, and be productive citizens, and not have to live with the stigma the rest of their lives. It's just
Mm.
an incredible story, and as you say, it's such a thrill and an honor to think we stand on the shoulders of these women, um, and those shoulders
Amen.
sit high. They sit very high.
Big
Big
shoes to fill
shoulders.
we've got.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, we hope you enjoy the episode. Feel free to share it on social, and send it to a friend, and keep in touch with us. We have our email always open to you and your prayer requests and suggestions. We really do pray for each and every one of you that listen, and want to support you in any way we can. So reach out to us on email by companyofcharity@gmail.com.
So, welcome everyone. You are listening to In the Company of Charity, the podcast of the Daughters of Charity, and we are now in another episode regarding the work of the sisters and the life of the patients at Carville in Louisiana, in over 100 years of service to people who had Hansen's disease at the time. The biblical kind of scourge that people thought it was of leprosy, we learned through the years that it was not all as horrible and scary as it should have been, and we just we need to recognize where we've been and where we are now, and to understand how this conversation can really help us to understand what happened, and how to tell this story in a way that's respectful. And so we have with us again today Wendy Chin-Tanner, who is the author of King of the Armadillos, really the one who helped start this conversation for us. It was a real delight to have her reach out to us around her book, and to talk more about Carville and the sisters who worked there. We're also joined by her dad, who is, as she says, the king of the armadillo. And he is here with us, Mr. Walter Chin, and we welcome both of you. And he's going to talk a little bit about his experience at Carville. We're so grateful for his testimony and his story about the experience there, and in some ways related to his experience with the sisters. And we also have again with us today Elizabeth Schexnyder, who is the director of the Carville Museum.
Right. Thank you again for having me. And it's so good to see Walter and Wendy again. And I'll be seeing Wendy in person soon, I hope, in New Orleans. So yeah, well, the museum is going through a renovation, and it's a time when I've reflected on my 20 plus years here and get to see the story a little differently because you're taking things apart and then you're going to put them back together. And in the process, you review things and review conversations you've had. And I was really lucky to have Walter come and spend time with me 5 years ago or so, and have a nice conversation. And we recorded it. And because we recorded it, I can listen to it again. I think the biggest shock that I experienced was realizing that he really didn't have prior musical training before his time at Carville, and then he flourished and became a pianist here. And I'd like to hear how the sisters guided him in that capacity. So, Walter, tell us a little bit about that.
Uh, well, the sisters were the anchors of the Carville healing process. You know, they did everything that made us comfortable, uh, and the healing process keeps on going. And they participated in dispensing medicine, physical therapy, entertainment. That's a big part of what I realized
Sure.
that did the healing for me, you know. And one sister was I was saying that one sister was saying uh, she produced and conducted and as a musical director uh, produced the Christmas pageant, the annual Christmas pageant every year. So she was everything that made it successful. So I was very much glad that happened to me in those years. You know, that made it make my healing comfortable and successful at the
Was
end.
that Sister Laura Stricker?
It must be, yes. I don't remember any of those names, but I
Oh, okay.
remember
She
them.
was a pharmacist as well as the music teacher, and she taught
Wow.
piano. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But she never taught me piano. But I was I was in the Protestant chapel. That's where I attended first, and the reverend there and his wife noticed that I love to sing and all that. They said, "How about getting engaging a pianist for you?" And they did, and they had a musical a student from LSU. She came like once a week for the last about 4 years that I learned from her. I learned from her in singing and a little bit of composing and pianos, and I helped the church playing for services on the organ when uh, when she was absent. She was also, my teacher was also the organist for the Protestant chapel. So that's why my stay was pretty enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. But there was a lot of pains in my life too. I had asthma, and I was suffering from the nerve on my arm. So I had two operations on my ulnar nerve on my arms. So it was but overall, the uh, the good side, the comfortable way of in Carville overshadows the pain that I suffer. So I became uh, very grateful for what they did for me.
It's just such a story as I'm listening to you of resilience, but also a place where healing wasn't just the focus of the physical healing, but a spiritual healing, an emotional healing, and finding the gifts that you had that might not have found outside, but the opportunities being open to say this can be more than the disease. Right? It's not just here to look at the disease, but the whole person, And I'm just real grateful when I hear you tell that story, because I think we realize it was like an incarceration, and you were there for quite a while. Is that right?
Yeah, I was there for 9 years.
Wow. And formative years. These were your teen and early 20s?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
Yeah, I think that the sisters paid particular attention to the children who were at Carville, and I want to emphasize that my dad was a child. I have a 17-year-old daughter, my dad's oldest grandchild, and she's still a child. And my dad was only 16 when he got there, and he went alone, and he was alone when he was there, and he wasn't visited by family for all of those 9 years. So the Carville community, including the sisters, became his family. And
yes.
I think in many ways he was mothered by a lot of the nuns who were there, a lot of the sisters who were there. He also sang in the choir at the Catholic Church. So I have these wonderful pictures that Elizabeth sent to me when I was researching the book of my dad right smack in the center of stage.
I think it was the Christmas pageant, though.
Yeah, the Christmas pageant, and flanked by his peers, and then a couple of sisters who sang in the choir along with him. So wonderful pictures.
Yeah, I want to also add that healing is not only medicine and pills and injections, and the other part, like recreation and entertainment, that's a big part of healing process.
Yeah. We were in another episode. We'll have Sister Loretta Gettemeyer. You would not have known her, but she lived down the river, and they would come up. Apparently, there were sisters from other houses that would come up on the holidays, because the sisters were somewhat isolated as well because they worked there. So sisters and others would take the barge or the ferry up to celebrate holidays. So I imagine there were times you saw even more of the sisters around when they would come visit one another so they could celebrate holidays together. Yeah.
I think those sisters were from Donaldsonville.
Yes.
20 miles away. Yeah. They would have had to cross the river to get here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have folks, those who are still around, they're in their 90s. Some of them are in their 90s now, and they have memories of coming. And Sister Loretta Gettemeyer was actually in Japan with Sister Hilary Ross.
Oh, my goodness.
She lived with her there. And she would visit Carville. She was in Donaldson, lived in Carville, would visit in Carville when Sister Hilary was there, and then they lived together in Japan after Sister Hilary left Carville. So there's a lot of history still out there that we need to mine. And
absolutely. I was curious about that, if Walter knew Sister Hilary.
You would have met her on your very first day there when they took your picture.
That's true.
Yeah. She was quite a woman for sure. We've heard a lot of stories about her. So you'll hear Sister Loretta talk about her as well. So,
sorry, I was going to say, I think she was a bit of a serious woman, and my dad is, he likes to joke around and chat, so that might not have been a good pairing conversationally.
Yeah. But Elizabeth, I know you wanted to tell us more about what you're finding as you said, deconstructing and then reconstructing the museum's artifacts and the writings, the photographs.
The stories and the connections, I think Walter hit on that when we first got started. All of the connections lead you to different tidbits of the story. As a matter of fact, I like the details that, and one of them I wanted to add about Sister Hilary. Of course, I never met her. She died in 1970 in Japan, and she's buried there. But she actually was known as a very serious person, and I have no doubt that she was. But she also had her own kind of little malady or secret. She had Bell's palsy, and it pulled the corner of her mouth. My mother had it as well, so I can really relate to it. And now that I know, I can see it, and it probably prevented her from smiling much because her grin would have been lopsided. So she had nerve damage on half of her face.
Yeah.
I don't know how that might have affected her.
Elizabeth, do you have portraits of all of the sisters that ever worked there?
I do.
You do? Oh, that's great. But
Yes.
I think I would recognize the faces better
Yes.
than names.
Yes, I understand what you're saying, Walter. Sometimes I find that because of the uniform, more or less, of the habit, which I think is part of the, when you're in a group, it sometimes that makes it difficult for me to see the face, the individual face, because I see them kind of as a group, and they often are photographed in groups. But I do, and if you ever would like to see a compilation of faces of the sisters who would have been here when you were here, I'll be happy to share that with you.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great. Yes. Okay.
Sister Hillary is pretty easy to spot
Mm.
because she does have a very stern demeanor, and she always has her glasses on, and she becomes very recognizable. And she stood out. She also established, not only did she take photographs of the patients before, as they arrived and as they left, but she established the first research laboratory here in the 1920s. And that's amazing. And not only is that an amazing feat, she went on to publish dozens and dozens of research papers.
Wow.
That are you can still find them at the National Library of Medicine.
Yeah, it's always been interesting to me that as I've done other studies of the Daughters of Charity in different places, and others will say we tend to be kind of quiet about the work we do because we're working, we're doing our work, what's in front of us, and then we move on to the next mission, and we don't tend necessarily to laud ourselves over what we've done. But as we begin then to look back in history and think, oh, these were some pretty remarkable women. Women who opened hospitals, ran hospital systems, sisters like Sister Hillary, who were involved in the research, not just for the accolades of the work she was doing, but because of the people she was serving. I mean, I know that as the legacy of the community I'm in, is that we do all that we do for the service of those who are vulnerable and suffering. And when I see that more and more, it's very encouraging to me as I begin to realize the work that our sisters have done. But that's why I enjoy so much, Walter, as you're saying, that the sisters were also fun. They weren't separate from you, but they were part of the community, which is also very much a hallmark of who we are and what we would expect. And so when we hear that from someone, realize the world may not know all of what the sisters did, but those whose lives needed to be impacted felt their love and compassion. We hope that's how everyone would have experienced it.
Sister Hillary is featured in the book. I fictionalized her as Sister Helen, and Victor, who is the character who was inspired by my dad, at one point sneaks into her lab to use the phone, and he gets caught, and then they start up quite a lovely relationship. She also notices that he is incredibly interested in the armadillo, the stuffed armadillo that she has in the lab. And in the book, not in real life, but in the book, she's already got this idea that armadillos will be important in research, which they later became. I kind of fudged the timeline a little bit. But so as a result of noticing Victor's interest in the armadillo, that's where her idea to get him involved in helping organize her research came from. Yeah. But so she was quite loving, is the thing. Beneath the stern exterior, she was a loving individual.
So were there any other sisters that you find kind of fascinating or curious beings, Elizabeth, as you've been looking at their writings? And
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, the early sisters were prolific letter writers, as you can guess, and it's a lot of it's administrative, but you get to understand their struggles, especially the early sisters. And the distance was greater then because, of course, they had the river and they had the train. They really didn't have personal automobiles that would go up and down River Road. So the isolation was extreme, and the the time frames that things got done, and it was even slower than it is today, because it's still slow. And they would report on comings and goings and doings and things that were needed, and always advocating for the patients, and sending these requests to the border control who's in New Orleans and getting response, and then having some internal dialogue. And every now and then you get a letter from one of the sister servants here to Emmitsburg, which was still the headquarters, and so it became real. Their personalities started peeking out, and I especially like the letters where sister servant, probably one of the earliest ones, like Sister Beatrice Hart or Benedicta Roach was one that stood out to me, would have to put their foot down and kind of get tough with the board back in New Orleans. And I loved that. And I so related to it because I've been here on my own more or less for 20 years. And my hospital administrators, I'm connected to the Hansen's Hospital, which is now an outpatient headquarters in Baton Rouge. And, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. So I latched onto the relatable back and forth with the sisters getting frustrated that things weren't getting done fast enough, and they needed help with this, and they needed help with that, and putting their foot down finally and getting real stern and getting results. And I just love that for so many reasons, because they didn't give up. They never gave up, ever, ever, ever. And some of the early sisters, of course, spent their whole careers here and even kind of died in the job. But I related so much, and I could feel their personalities and their need coming through the letters.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the sister servants, because a sister servant in our houses, it's a very specific term, as you can imagine. She literally is the servant to the sisters. It's her role in the house, not as the local superior, as you might imagine in some other kind of religious communities, but she is really the one that helps to animate the service and animate the sisters. And so if they need something to do their work, that's her role, is to help that happen and to make that happen. And they were often as well the sister servant in the house, but she was to the local sisters, but then she was also an administrator or someone who was in a role where she really needed to make sure things were going on. And as you say, these were tough girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sisters were truly heroic. Yeah, that's the real heroes. That take a greater part, the best part that did the most healing than the medicines and all that, all kinds of injections. They did everything to make us feel comfortable and make us whole again.
Yeah, I think that as they were such a big part of the nursing staff, my dad, who spent a lot of time in the infirmary, especially in the first couple of years that he was there, I mean, they were caring for him day in and day out. I was sent all of my dad's medical records, which he helped me get. What's so interesting in the notes is how intricate the notes were that the sisters kept. And you can really see their personalities emerge in the notes. And, some of them thought that he was really cute and really funny, and some of them thought he was naughty.
I was quite naughty, yeah. I was a risk taker. And I injured myself twice. One time, there was a tennis court, right? There tennis and golf and other fishing and all that. Once I tried to emulate the profession by jumping the net, so my foot was caught and I sprained my ankle. Oh. That's one time. And then after the 4th of July celebration, the next day I picked up the Dutch and I tried to.
Did you make a bomb, Walter?
Yeah, to try to relight the blockbusters, and the fuse was too small. So when I lit it, I tried to get away. I couldn't, and it busted my ear, my right eardrum.
Yeah, the sisters didn't think that was so great.
No,
I think you got in trouble for that one.
Yeah, I got scolded. Should
Scolded.
never do it. But I was a risk taker, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
there was some fun and excitement going on too. That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Yes,
Lots of
and I
them.
think that the sisters really advocated for recreation and entertainment, and I think in the early decades they were the voice for the voiceless.
Yes.
But then once the patients found their voice, they supported that endeavor. It seems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the bingo. One of the sisters ran the bingo. Every I think it was every week we had a bingo
Yes.
bingo thing going on. It was well, run by the sister, obviously. Yeah.
did you get prizes and things? They probably always had some little trinket thing to
Yeah.
give us a prize.
I don't remember getting any.
Something else I saw in your medical notes. So there were a couple of doctors that I guess my dad didn't like. So according to the sisters, my dad would stonewall them. Like they would
Yeah.
come in to see him and he wouldn't talk to them. And the sisters would keep notes on
Oh, wow.
on the number of times you did that.
Yeah.
Apparently there was an Easter pageant that he wanted to sing in, and he was in the infirmary, and I think one of the doctors was trying to say that he wasn't ready to do it, and that was one round of stonewalling, and the sisters were advocating for him to be able to do it. I mean, they were saying Walter's fine, he there's nothing stopping him from being in the pageant. And so I think just reading between the lines of the notes, there was a bit of a disagreement between the sister nurses and that particular doctor.
Yeah.
I think that kind of tension was necessary and good, and that the patients probably benefited from that, because I do think the sisters advocated for the patients first. And I might also add, one of the most interesting side history that I've run into is that the Daughters of Charity were here when from almost the first days that the patients arrived, from the 1890s on till 2005. Well, in between, the hospital went from being state run to federally run, and that the surprise, I guess, is that the federal government thought long and hard about keeping the sisters in residence. I thought in the beginning that there was no way that they would have let the sisters go because of their institutional knowledge and their rapport with the patients. But they did. They thought about it. And it's interesting because, of course, the sisters were all women, and the federal government was almost 99%, if not 100% male at that point. So there was a little push and pull, and happily that they retained the sisters and made them, civil servants, which I'm sure suited them fine because they had done all the work and had all the knowledge, and they were probably more than willing to share that with the federal government. But I think there was a little bit of a power struggle for the government about keeping the sisters around.
There. Yeah. I think that as you say, in those days, the roles of women and men in culture, in society, were very different. But coming from a church that, where the sisters are doing the work and having to deal with their pastors in their churches, we're kind of used to. We're used to the hierarchy and saying we're here for a purpose. And often, as you say, the sisters are the keepers of the information, not just the Daughters of Charity, but religious women, consecrated women throughout the history of the church have been on the ground floor. They've been in the trenches. They've been one-on-one with people. And more often than not, I think the hierarchy that wants to have some control realizes they're getting it done and they're doing it well. And nobody wants to take on the role that we're doing, because it's not always easy. Yeah, and we're so appreciative of people like yourselves who see the story see it told in all of these pieces, and are able to put all that back together. So the legacy, not just of us in our community, but we don't want to lose that either, because it really is an encouragement to us, especially our younger members
Sure.
who have been fascinated, even like waiting for these episodes to come out because they're like, we want to know what happened. Because for them, this is, history. It's much longer. They wouldn't have known any of these sisters, nor do they know anything about Carville really, because it's so different
Yeah.
now for them and their understanding of the disease itself and how it's treated. And so for them, this is really fascinating to see it. But I think also I just appreciate your care of it. And for Wendy telling this story and including the sisters in the way you portrayed them was so beautiful. I thought was we always kind of have this like, oh, the sister's out there with her, ruler ready to, wrap your knuckles. And I think, that is not when we look at the history and we really look at the lives of these women in these very difficult times. We have to remember, as Walter was saying, they had these huge coronets, these beautiful white starched things on their head. I mean, this was an absolutely gorgeous piece of art in many ways that they constructed every day. But one rainstorm and that fell, and they had to remake it. And their habits were wool. I mean, these we're not walking around in comfy clothes.
Walter, did you have air conditioning when you were here?
They wanted to, I think, because of my asthma. I don't remember, but I was suffering consistently, until even until I left Carville. I was suffering in New York also. So I think my asthma was over when I was past 70 years old.
Oh,
60.
good. This is one of the worst environments for that. Plus, I don't think it was air conditioned when Walter was here. I don't think we got AC until the 70s, like the late 60s.
No air conditioning in an auditorium or any place there.
In addition to the wool habit, the sisters who were working in the infirmary and particularly in the surgery would have to wear their nursing whites on top of their wool habits. So it was, double layer of material, which seems astonishing. But I think the sisters were just so ahead of their time in understanding that healing is holistic. It's not just medical, it's not just healing of symptoms, it's spiritual as well. And you need the spiritual healing in order to heal the whole person. I think they really understood that and fostered that in the environment.
Yeah, in the 1600s, 1633, when our congregation was founded, both St. Vincent and St. Louise de Marillac reminded the sisters over and over that it was the whole person that we were to serve. We were there to assist the priests in the spiritual life of the people that we visited. We were the first congregation to not be cloistered. So, we were not behind walls kind of praying for people and addressing only the spiritual life, but also the corporal needs of people, their physical needs as well. So they had to go hand in hand because for us, it didn't make sense to serve one and not the other. You have to feed both the soul and the body. And so that comes from, again, 1633. People, the church wasn't thinking in those terms then. And so there was this sense that we were opening, as you said, kind of opening up new gates of service to people. And that has stayed with us as our charism and as our way of being of service, that we try as much as we can to recognize both the body, the spirit, and the mind. As you were saying that Walter, you learned to play the piano while you were there, and that you had a beautiful singing voice. It's such a gift to your family, I'm sure, and a gift to you, and was a gift to the other patients at Carville to enjoy that.
There was always music in my house when I was growing up.
Yeah, we have a piano everywhere.
Yes. And my dad taught me to play and to sing, and both of my daughters are also very musical. So yeah, he's passed it on, and that all came from Carville.
Yeah, because and I also believe that the church, both Catholic and Protestant, play a great part in healing the healing process. That anybody would take advantage of that would will
Yeah.
heal the body quicker.
Art, creativity, education,
Okay.
those were things that I think the sisters really understood were integral to the spiritual and, as you say, the mind component of healing, the kind of reintegration of the whole person that becomes dismantled when they suffer not just from an illness, but from a heavily stigmatized illness.
Walter, one question I'd like to ask, Wendy has said a couple of times that she really feels like your experience at Carville helped you to be the parent that you were, the father that you were. How do you see that experience? So after you left, did did you have a sense that what you learned there was what helped you to become the man that you are, the father that you became, the grandfather that you are? Were there
Yes. Yeah.
values, lessons that you learned there?
Well, yeah, the church helped me a lot in that regard. Yeah. So it's just like peace and charity and faith. That's part of the the whole process of creating a person's uh, personality. So that helped me a lot in bringing up a family, and and that's how it is. That's
Political
how it works.
activism also,
Oh yeah,
standing up for marginalized people. My
right.
dad always, fostered that with me.
And I ran for the government. There's a patients federation, like a governing body that looks out for ourselves. We had like an entertainment committee that we could book movies for the weekly showing. And I was the treasurer of that, writing checks out to buy those movies or whatever that's needed to help the process, help the healing process.
I think it also even trickled down to my dad's encouragement of me as an artist. I
Yeah.
think sometimes, and particularly in the Asian American community, the arts is not exactly the place where most Asian American parents want their kids to go because it's so iffy in terms of being able to make a living. But my dad always seemed to see the value. And, I think he saw what I did as being important and that if I had a gift for it, I should pursue it.
And I even won a couple of contests, uh, being creating a poster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah. I found the photographs. I think I
Yeah,
sent them. Yeah, they were in
I
the
got it.
patients. Yeah, the patients also published their own newspaper. And what Walter's referring to when he'd give me an idea of what he was up to, I could find evidence of that in the Star magazine. And I
Yes.
love that the patients took control of their lives by creating their own paper and telling their own stories. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the beauty of if if I can use that word to describe the community that developed here is represented by the people who were here. Some, of course, if they were writers, they would have written for the Star magazine or the Question Mark. If they were performers like Walter, they would have been able to play in holiday performances and cantatas and sing in the churches or give other special presentations. So the people were encouraged to be involved and to use themselves to, participate in their lives.
Yeah, I think the sister was a great part in creating that atmosphere for us to take interest in it. Whatever, if you're interested in it, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
There
think
were
that's such a great point, Elizabeth. It's so important that at Carville, people were encouraged to not just survive, but to be alive.
Right.
Wow,
It's wonderful.
I just keep hearing. I think as we were saying, the body, mind, spirit, the way in which the sisters were really trying to encourage the life, not just people coming to heal their bodies, but to be healed of even the isolation, their separation from their families, the disruption in their own development. That creates really a sense of resilience. That somebody leaving Carville could leave as a very resilient person. Like Walter, you leave not just leaving behind the experience of Carville, but taking with you the goodness of it, as demonstrated in the relationships among all of yourselves, and as well as the encouragement from the sisters, which I just think is so amazing. And we have it documented in so many different ways. The story of the sisters in their service is such an encouragement to each of us as daughters of charity, to hear the legacy of our sisters and know that, who we think we are, we are what we claim to be. And that's an important piece as well. And I'm just so grateful for this conversation today. And any last words that any of you would like to share in this episode? We're going to be meeting again, I think, in other episodes. So anything you'd like to add now?
I think something that Carville and the sisters exemplify is this idea that family is not only biology. I think of Carville as being not only a community, but a family. So it was really beautiful what you said, Sister Elizabeth, before about the sisters being a family, but a part of that extended family is also everyone who is at Carville.
Walter, we're just so grateful that you've, not just the courage, but the desire to tell your story as a story of life, and a story of your resilience, as I said, and a story of passion, and just the true gift of life, when I'm sure there were days it was very difficult for you. And so thank you all. I really appreciate your time and the gift that you are to all of us.
You're very welcome, sister.